Hello and welcome into Locked on Wolves. This is the post-game podcast. Karl-Anthony Towns drops 39 on the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday night. The Wolves win the second night of a back-to-back for the first time this season, and Golden State continues to learn that Target Center is apparently a house of horrors for them. They've lost 5 in a row in Minnesota. We're going to break it all down on the post-game pod tonight. Welcome in. You are Locked on Wolves.
You are Locked on Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked on Wolves podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked on Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy hump day. It's a victory Wednesday. Your Minnesota Timberwolves have won 3 out of the last 4. They won on the second night of a back-to-back for the first time all season long after beating the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday night. This is the post-game podcast. It's a celebratory post-game podcast. We're going to break down just how the Wolves got it done, including Cat's 39 points and some fantastic defense. I want to start with the main takeaway across this whole thing. We're going to do that here next. First, though, a big thank you for making Locked on Wolves your first listen each and every day. Of course, the show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked on T-Wolves and also at Beecken. That's with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right, so setting this thing up, I mean, the Warriors were shorthanded in this game, but so were the Timberwolves. No Anthony Edwards from Minnesota. He sat out with knee tendonitis, continuing soreness in the knee that's been bothering him for much of the season. Now, the Golden State Warriors didn't have Klay Thompson, non-COVID illness. They still don't have Draymond Green. Nemanja Bjelica, old friend Nemanja Bjelica, former Timberwolf, was not playing as well, but Steph Curry was, and basically the rest of the key rotation players for the Warriors were. And we're still talking about the team that's number 2 in the West coming into the game, and probably a top 3 team in the entire NBA. The number 1 rated defense league wide, and Steph Curry, who as of a month ago, everybody probably thought was the MVP of the league, and he still may win the award depending on how the Warriors close the season. So, I mean, this is still a nice win, and we'll get into kind of some of the at the end of the show. I want to talk a little bit through kind of the context of these last few games, but this game specifically, the headline here is Karl-Anthony Towns scores 39 points. But I want to talk my biggest takeaway, and I'm going to organize this a little differently than what I've been doing on post-game podcasts recently. I want to start with my biggest takeaway and then get into a couple additional kind of ancillary takeaways, I guess, for the game, as well as some game flow stuff before we get to individual studs and duds. So, well, the headline is Karl-Anthony Towns scores 39, grabs 9 rebounds, dominates thoroughly. I want to, my key takeaway really is the Timberwolves defense, which of course led to some easy offense for Minnesota. First, let's talk about the defense. So I spent most of the show, I actually spent a good chunk of the show on Tuesday complaining about the Timberwolves defense in a win over the Cavaliers, because this was Cleveland was very shorthanded, already a mediocre offense, missing basically their entire backcourt, starting 2-way guy in the backcourt, the whole thing. The Wolves gave up whatever they gave up, 122 or whatever crazy number it was to the Cavs on Monday. Obviously, the defense was atrocious against Philadelphia last Friday, and the offensive struggles got, Chris Finch talked a lot about the offensive issues against the Sixers after Friday's game, but the defense to me has been the more worrisome trend. And I spent some time on Monday's show talking about why now is the right time to introduce some of these different concepts defensively, the switching concepts, the more zone, a little bit of drop coverage, some of the stuff they've done in past years. But this game was actually really impressive. And even though the Warriors are missing some key guys, you're still talking Steph Curry. You're still talking the 10th rated offense league wide. You're talking a team that's 3rd in 3-point attempts per game and 8th in 3-point shooting percentage. This is, and yes, if you just look at the box score and you think, they gave up 114, it must not have been that good. It was pretty good defense. There were some garbage time points in there. The game was basically over before Golden State even got to 100 points. And I mean, they scored 27 in the fourth quarter, and a good chunk of that was garbage time. that it was a good defensive performance for Minnesota. I thought, at least in the half court. And the Wolves are still switching a lot more than they have all season. It's starting to look smoother. I talked about this after the Cleveland game. It started to look smoother then. It was even better on Tuesday. And you can't mess up against the Warriors if you're switching on the perimeter. You can't let Steph Curry get an inch or he's going to launch a three. Now, the Wolves were fortunate. Curry wasn't super sharp in this game. He was 5 of 16 from 3. He airballed a three-pointer, which you could probably count on maybe two hands the number of times you've ever seen. I know I can. The number of times I've seen Steph Curry miss a three-pointer, or excuse me, airball a three-pointer. Feels like miss a three-pointer. But 5 of 16 from 3 for Steph. But the Wolves did a good job of contesting his three-point attempts. He still squeezed the trigger 16 times from beyond the arc. But the Wolves did a really good job on Steph. They did a good job on the perimeter. They made life difficult for the Warriors backcourt, which is not what happened against, especially early in the game against Cleveland on Monday. This was really good in terms of switching on defense. Big props to Jordan McLaughlin. He was phenomenal defensively. He played 29 minutes in this game. Jordan McLaughlin played 29 minutes off the bench. Didn't do much offensively. But man, he was good on defense, getting around screens. The Warriors run a lot of dribble handoff actions, and the Wolves were doing a really good job of staying as close as they could, attached to the hip of Gary Payton II, Steph Curry, and the other members of the backcourt, Jordan Poole, the other guys in the backcourt for the Warriors, staying attached to their hip, trailing them around these handoffs, and really, rear contests, trying to bother their jumpers from behind, forcing the Warriors into some tough long kind of long 2-pointers, mid-range shots. Really impressive. Getting through some of those handoffs, switching on some screens, very smooth. And overall, you look at the issues against the Cavs on Monday. Early in the game, it was just general ball pressure, point of attack defense against the Cavs. Later in the game, after the Wolves built that 23-point lead, the problems in the third quarter were mostly just not getting out there to contest three-pointers on the perimeter against a pretty, outside of, well, really a pretty overall mediocre three-point shooting team in the Cavs. The Wolves actually contested threes really well in this game against the Warriors. Again, Klay Thompson certainly helps from that perspective. No Nemanja Bjelica helps on some level as well. But the Warriors shot 13 of 45. That's 28.9% from three. And the Timberwolves did a really good job of, for the most part, getting out on the perimeter, contesting, get a hand in the face of the Warriors shooters. And so it was kind of this combination of really good job switching in pick and roll situations, good job of staying attached on dribble handoff situations, and good job getting to the perimeter and closing out under control for Minnesota in this game. And all the missed threes and some solid defensive rebounding led to plenty of fast break points for the Timberwolves, and the defense legitimately led to offense in this game for Minnesota. And for a team that has been up and down offensively, no Anthony Edwards in this game for Minnesota because of the tendonitis. They needed as many easy buckets as they could get in transition, and they did. And then when they weren't in transition, Karl-Anthony Towns dominated in the half court. We'll get into that here in a minute because we have to spend some time talking about Cat's game. But for me, the biggest takeaway is the defensive improvement literally in 24 hours or 25 hours, I guess, from Tip in Cleveland on Monday night. The defensive improvement was incredible. And then the defense leading to offense was huge in this game, was really big in the Timberwolves building what became a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter, or was a double-digit lead, went away, and then came back in the fourth quarter. I want to talk about my other, really, I guess, 3 other takeaways, as well as a little bit of game flow stuff here next segment, and then we'll get into individual studs and duds as we always do on the post-game pod. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at PrizePicks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love PrizePicks. I know you will too. It's super easy to use. You just pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. It's awesome. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It really is that easy. PrizePicks is also safe and offers fast withdrawals. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. The way it works is PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of. So points scored, rebounds, steals, etc. And they allow mixed sport entries. So for instance, you could pick Karl-Anthony Towns over in points. And let's see, what else is happening? I guess we're not to baseball yet. Football's over. Any other sport that's out there, hockey, you could pick, I don't know, if the Wild are playing on the same night, you could pick maybe it's goals scored for Kaprizov or whatever it is. And you could take over, you could take the under, you could use your mixed sport entry and win that way. This is a ton of fun during football season. You can also mix, not just mix sports, but mix games. So multiple NBA games on the same night as well. But PrizePicks doesn't just offer NBA. You could also do college basketball, college football when that's in season. Same with NFL, and then MLB eventually, hopefully soccer, MMA, and more. It's really amazing how flexible it is to mix your entries. For a limited time, PrizePicks is an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point, but you must use code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to listeners of Locked On. Sign up today. Use code NBA, $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. All right. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. It is truly appreciated. For your next listen, you can check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. All right. Uh, Wolves Warriors. I want to talk a couple more key takeaways. Number one was the defense, really specifically the half court defense and the defense leading to offense, transition offense for Minnesota, all that flowing together. Uh, my other key takeaway, or the next key takeaway, has to be Karl-Anthony Towns. He was so good in this game from start to finish. He dominated this game early, middle, and late. Finished with 39 points and 22 shots, 3 of 6 outside the arc, 8 of 11 at the free throw line. The free throw shooting cost him the 40-point game. You could tell at the end of the game he wanted that 40 points. Was upset when he missed the free throw, was upset when he came out of the game. He should have come out of the game a couple minutes earlier, honestly. But 39 and 9, 1 assist, only 2 turnovers, and only 2 personal fouls. Only 2 personal fouls. I mean, thank goodness, finally, for Karl-Anthony Towns in 32 minutes. And it was a plus 10 in the plus minus column, which was the best among Timberwolves starters. Cat was really good. I mean, he dominated in the post. The Warriors, I mean, Kevon Looney had not a prayer to stop Karl-Anthony Towns, nor did, Jonathan Kuminga, anybody else that came in and tried to guard Karl-Anthony Towns in the post. There was no chance for the Warriors. They tried zone at one point and tried collapsing on Towns. Didn't matter. And then Towns went into this. It almost looked like he was Giannis, just standing on the perimeter in face-up situations. We've seen a lot of this from him since the first of the year, really. Um, of the Timberwolves just using him essentially in a 5-out offense, getting the ball to him at the top of the key, just letting him go to work. And this is, I mean, he hit the game winner the other night because the jab step, guys know they can't stay in front of him. Bigs can't stay in front of him. Smalls can't contest his three, and they can't guard him in the post. So you jab step, you get him off you shoot the three. If they play up on you, you just drive past him and score at the basket. And Towns can do that. He has, not quite the length of a Giannis, but similar length. He's not as athletic as Giannis, but he's long. He's athletic enough. He's got great touch. He's obviously a better shooter than Giannis, which helps give him that, because he doesn't quite have the length or athleticism of Giannis, but he's got the dangerous 3-point shot. Guys have to back off him a little. It gives Towns that little bit of extra space to allow him to have a Giannis-like effect when he goes to the basket. And he can drive either hand, too. He hit a ridiculous left-handed jump hook on the left baseline in the first half of this game. I think it was second quarter. It was nuts. If you watch it back, the bench reaction, there were like 3 guys on the bench that were like, no way did he just make that left-handed running hook on the baseline. It's an impossible shot. And I think that was with Looney guarding him. This was just a masterclass for Towns. He made 3 3-pointers, got to the line 11 times. Easily could have been to line a couple more times, which is kind of par for the course for Towns. But really fantastic performance for the most part, under control. Good defensively. I mean, he plays the blitzing pick and roll scheme, the high wall pick and roll scheme so well, and that continues to be a positive for his game. It'd be hard to find a better Karl-Anthony Towns game than this one. He was start to finish. This wasn't like a second quarter and then disappears for a while, but he was aggressive. The first play the Timberwolves ran in the half court in this game was to get Towns an open 3-pointer from the wing, and he drained it. So you knew the Wolves were looking for him to get involved after he disappeared at times against Cleveland and certainly against Philly last Friday. This was a wall-to-wall Towns game, and kudos to Finch for calling a bunch of plays for Towns. Kudos to Towns for executing and for the Timberwolves for getting him the ball in these schemes. Now, obviously, no Anthony Edwards took a few shots off the table that then got kind of reallocated to Towns, but a really strong performance for Cat. Um, my other really major takeaway is the bench performance, and specifically Malik Beasley. I talked about J-Mac, about Jordan McLaughlin a little bit already, but I want to talk about Beasley. Malik Beasley was fantastic. He, of course, missed the game against Philadelphia on Friday, and the Wolves obviously missed what he can bring to the table. This was a 6 3-pointer made game for him. 20 points on 11 shots, 7 of 11 shooting, 6 of 9 on threes, and 4 rebounds. Um, Malik's been very up and down this year. That's well documented. I've talked about it a ton in the show. He's been in my duds category. Has to have been a dud more times than any other Timberwolf on the roster this year in my studs and duds post game. Um, but the needle's been pointing up a lot more lately. I mean, he had 6 threes in this game against Cleveland on Monday. He only played 17 minutes, but he hit 3 threes in that 17 minutes. 5 of 7 on threes against Memphis last Thursday. Again, he missed Friday's game. So since the All-Star break, in the 3 games he's played in, Malik Beasley has made 14 3-pointers across those 3 games. He's 14 of 22 from outside the arc. So he's over 50% in each of his 3 games he's played. And except, the couple games right before the break, he struggled. But really, since the first of the year, the needle's been pointing up for Malik Beasley. You could look at the month of February, again, kind of a cold finish to the month, but still better than previous months. 46% from 3 in the month of February, 12 points per game. Compare that to, what was he, 32.7% from 3 in January. Go back to December, 36.5%. Go back to the first month of the season, 32%. 46% for the month of February, and that includes a couple of clunkers towards the end of the month. Malik Beasley, I'm not ready to say that he's back yet, but if this is Malik Beasley who can score 20 points a game just in transition and catch and shoot 3-point situations, then I mean, look out. I mean, if he's going to be able to do that, and especially in a game with no Anthony Edwards, and the Timberwolves needed him to do what he did, this offense is, again, I said this before the season, a sky's the limit type situation. It really could be if Malik Beasley is who the Timberwolves thought he was going to be this season moving forward. 28 minutes, 20 points, and 7 of 11 shooting. He pitched in the 4 rebounds, which is big, and a great performance from Malik. Otherwise, the Timberwolves bench, Taurean Prince, a really good game, 11 points. Jordan McLaughlin, I talked about already, as being phenomenal defensively. He also pitched in 5 rebounds, 2 assists. He also had 3 steals. Nas shot 4 of 6 from the field. Jalen Noel played because of the injury to Edwards. So that meant Jaden McDaniels started. Noel played 17 minutes off the bench, and he was perfect from the field, 2 for 2, made a free throw, 5 points. I mean, there's not going to be a dud. I mean, spoiler for my studs and duds segment, there's not going to be a dud for this game either. Everyone played well. The bench unit was fantastic in this game. But especially props to Jordan McLaughlin defensively, Malik Beasley offensively, well-rounded games from Prince, Reed, and Noel. But McLaughlin and Beasley carried the Timberwolves bench. My last takeaway, real quickly, and I meant to say this in the first segment, the rebounding has been so bad lately. Timberwolves were a +2 on the glass. Frankly, it should have been better than that. I mean, who on the Warriors should have ever contested a rebound against Karl-Anthony Towns and Jared Vanderbilt? Still, +2, only allowing 8 offensive rebounds to the Warriors. Solid performance on the glass, and that was a big part of the Wolves hanging on to this thing down the stretch. So, all things considered, a really, really solid all the way around performance for Minnesota. Okay, let's close the show by doing individual studs and duds. I already kind of spoiled it, no duds, but I want to highlight a couple of guys in terms of their individual performances and then get into the context of these last couple games real briefly. What I think this means, against clearly some shorthanded teams, but still good teams, well-coached teams that typically execute very well. So I want to get into all that here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends at Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution, though, because I actually enjoy eating them. I actually had a blueberry muffin Built Bar today on my way home from work, and it was phenomenal. Have you tried Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're delicious. These are going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, including Puffs. It's 100% real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're genuinely better. The typical candy bar could be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories, but just go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be absolutely blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which is usually around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for the month of February, and there's still some there on the site. I just looked. White chocolate cookies and cream. They're delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious, and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They actually make it taste delicious first, and then they figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it, but they really do pull it off every single time. Trust me. Go to built.com, use promo code locked15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, promo code locked15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, let's talk individual studs and duds from Wolves Warriors. Obviously, Karl-Anthony Towns, headliner A1, 39 points, 9 rebounds, 14 to 22 shooting, 3 of 6 on 3-point attempts, 8 of 11 on threes, only 1 assist, but also only 2 turnovers and 2 personal fouls. Was really good. Spent a lot of time on him earlier, but he obviously was the best player on the floor in this one for either team. Secondly, for me, Malik Beasley, he hit some big shots when the Timberwolves needed him to, when they were faltering just a little bit. There was, they had that double-digit third quarter lead, got all the way down to 6 a couple of different times, and Malik always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. 6 of 9 on threes, en route to 20 points, 7 of 11 overall from the floor, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal for Malik Beasley. The third one's a little trickier for me. I'm going to go ahead and give it to D'Angelo Russell. I mean, it's tempting to give it to McLaughlin because of the defense, but generally as a whole, the Wolves played good defense. Russell also had the 4 turnovers, which were a little bit unsightly. A couple of them were pretty sloppy. It just, open floor. Like, I think it was the first part of the third quarter. There were almost 2 consecutive turnovers that were just kind of just awful. But the shooting was really good. 22 points at 8 of 17. He's only 2 of 7 outside the arc, but generally really good for D'Lo. Hit a couple of tough shots in the first half as the Wolves were building that lead that ended up being 12 points at halftime. 22 points, 7 assists, 3 rebounds, 2 steals for D'Angelo Russell. Really solid game. But I mean, really, there's a bunch of guys you could have put third in terms of studs in this game. I didn't talk much about Noel, but I did have in my notes. He had that stretch. It was kind of like the 3, 4, 5 minute mark in the third quarter when, again, this was like a 6-point game. Noel comes into the game. The Timberwolves needed a bucket. I think this was even out of a timeout. He got into the paint, scored a tough kind of hanging jumper on the right side of the floor near the elbow. Then he comes down, drives into the paint, kicks it out, gets a fantastic assist, and then comes back down on defense, locks in individually. I forget who it was. It might have actually been Steph Curry. Gets a stop one-on-one defensively, stays in front of the offensive player, contests the shot, miss, comes back down, gets another assist. So 3 consecutive offensive possessions, a bucket, 2 assists, sandwiched in between all of that was a fantastic individual defensive effort. That was a really important stretch for Minnesota, mid-late third quarter, and Noel was a really, really big part of that. I said this earlier, no duds for this game. I mean, like, nobody played poorly. Jared Vanderbilt was quiet for his standards. He was fine. Jaden McDaniels was pretty quiet compared to what we've been used to. Foul trouble continues to be a massive issue for him. He had 5 fouls in just 23 minutes in this game, but nobody played poorly for the Timberwolves. This was a good all the way around team win. So real quickly, the context of everything here. The Wolves are now 3-1 since the All-Star break. Their only loss being the really disappointing one to the Sixers. But this is a murderer's row. I mean, this is 4 teams that are all in the top 3 in their respective conferences coming out of the break. The Grizzlies, Sixers, Cavs, and Warriors. Timberwolves just won 3 out of 4 against that murderer's row. And oh, by the way, all 4 of them were parts of back-to-back sets. Now, I get that the Cavs are woefully short-handed. No Darius Garland, no Colin Sexton, obviously, no Karis LeVert, no Ricky Rubio, a very depleted backcourt for the Cavs. I know that. The Warriors didn't have Klay Thompson. They didn't have Draymond Green. I get that. But the Cavs still had, their all-star Jared Allen. They still had Lauri Markkanen, Kevin Love, Evan Mobley. The Warriors still had Steph Curry. these guys, these teams still had their head coaches. They still had relatively deep rotations. And Timberwolves won both those games. They beat the Cavs by 5, beat the Warriors by 15 on consecutive nights. I mean, these wins aren't anything to sneeze at. And then you look at the broader context of the upcoming schedule. The Timberwolves now have 2 nights off, which gives Anthony Edwards a total of 3 nights to rest the knee tendonitis, and then hopefully come back and play Friday. The Timberwolves go to Oklahoma City. It's another back-to-back, which is just crazy that there's 3 back-to-back sets. They play at Oklahoma City Friday, home for Portland on Saturday. So very winnable games for the Timberwolves. Oklahoma City, of course, still doing Oklahoma City things and struggling. Portland played a little bit better, kind of right around the break. They had won 4 in a row after losing 6 in a row, but now they've lost 2 more, the Warriors and the Nuggets, though. So it's not like they've had easy games. And then they play the Suns on Wednesday night. So they have another game here before the Wolves see them Saturday. Actually, they probably have 2 games before Saturday. But Portland is obviously a winnable game on Saturday. And then they play Portland again, consecutive games at Target Center against Portland. And then that's in between the Thunder game Friday night, and then they play the Thunder in Minnesota next week. The Thunder have been, I mean, bad all season. They're 19-42. They just lost to the Kings by 21, and recently lost to the Suns by 20, to the Spurs by 8. They've lost 3 out of 4, and more broadly, they've lost 10 out of their last 12 games. So, I mean, the Wolves really should win each of their next 4 games, which would be a nice 6-game winning streak. I mean, it's likely they drop one. I mean, the back-to-back's not going to be easy. There's a lot of travel in there still too. And then they follow that up with at Orlando next Friday. So for the next week and a half, the next 10 days, the Timberwolves have games that they'll be favored in by multiple possessions. It's time to gain some ground in the Western Conference. And even if they've done some of this damage against shorthanded teams, they're still good teams. These wins still matter. You'll take the wins however you can get them. And of course, with Denver and the Clippers not apparently ever going to lose again, these wins are super important. Denver's won 6 straight. The Wolves are now 3 back of the 6th spot. The Clippers have won 4 straight, and they're only 1.5 games behind the Timberwolves for 7. Of course, the bottom is falling out for the Lakers. So, it's very, very likely the Wolves finish in 7th or 8th in the Western Conference. I still think 7th remains the most likely outcome, but they have to fend off the Clippers. And by winning the games you're supposed to win, shorthanded good teams, just a bunch of games against bad teams upcoming, you got to win those games because the schedule gets tough again after this next stretch. So at any rate, we'll of course have a show Thursday, and then Friday we'll preview the Thunder game. And it's all, plenty to talk about this week. Want to kind of, handicap the playoff picture a little bit more and dive a little bit deeper into some individual performances, now that we're basically 3/4 of the way through the season. So that's all upcoming this week. Make sure you follow and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you to those of you that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. It's greatly appreciated. If you listen, if you watch on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe, to like the video, to comment. If you listen on Apple, please give us a rating on the show. Hopefully it's 5 stars, and leave a comment. It definitely helps us get in front of more folks, and it's greatly appreciated. You can also find the show on any of your favorite audio platforms. You also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken, with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Thanks again for listening to Locked On Wolves. Of course, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. And while you're making us your first listen, don't forget you can make your second listen Locked On NBA. It's the Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.